Hi, everyone. I'm Andre Young. Welcome to the Leaders Toolbox. I am so excited that you are here with us today because I have the guest of a lifetime here with us today. So if you are ready to jump into enhancing leadership and work-life harmony, not only for you, but for those that you are leading, because leaders build other leaders, then this is your spot because we have the amazing Cheri Allen with us today. Now, I'm going to give a brief introduction and we're going to jump into all of these nuggets. So if you get some pen and paper, get your phone ready to get some notes. And if you're driving, be prepared to pull over and take those notes. Do not get in the accident because you were loving what we are giving you today. So Cheri Allen is not only the principal organization and development consultant for Oracle, but she's also, and I'm honored to say, a great friend of mine. I was doing some work for King Arthur when I met and Cheri and I met. She brought me in, and it was such a fantastic thing. And I tell people all the time, when you meet great people, it's so important to stay connected. And Cheri, we've been able to stay on Zoom calls and talk life and leadership and work-life harmony. It's been an honor. Thank you so much for being here on the show here today.
Oh, it's such a great blessing, Andre. And it's such an honor to work with you always. I have to share that there are leaders who attended your training. Boy, that is 3 years ago now, that still quote some of the things you taught them. So I love what you do. It's amazing. And it's, again, such an honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. And guys, let's buckle up because Cheri, you mind if we jump right in?
Let's do it.
Okay. So guys, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff here today. So if you're a leader within an organization or aspire to be, we're going to be covering some topics like the main factors of leadership. Okay. We're going to be talking about transitioning professionally as a leader. We're going to be talking about the mixed messages that a lot of organizations are giving their employees. And then one of my favorite questions at the end. So stay tuned. So Cheri, for you, you have been a leader at some juggernaut companies, from King Arthur to Oracle, and probably more than I know about.
Yes.
What do you say goes into being a great leader?
That's such a wonderful question. And, as I've had close to 25 years of experience in big corporations, you see a lot of different leadership styles. But I think there are a couple things as I think back on great leaders that I've worked with, had the privilege to observe and learn from myself. There are a couple tenets, and they're not technical capabilities, Andre. Certainly that is, as I like to call it, entry to the game, that technical knowledge, but and the business knowledge, the financial acumen, all the buzzwords that you hear, they're very much personal trust building characteristics. Things like being sincere. I think we've all been in situations where you hear what I call the corporate speak. Someone talks for 5 minutes
And
and they
said
use
nothing.
really articulate words, right? But at the end, you're like, okay, that didn't really move this conversation forward, or that was just filler. So really being sincere. And, this is another buzzword, but transparency. And when I talk to employees, and I've had the privilege of doing lots of focus groups, lots of one-on-ones with employees throughout my career, there's always an acknowledgement that leaders are dealing with issues that they probably can't talk about because they're still half-baked, if you will. Employees know that. People are smart. I always say people are smart. But what transparency means to me then is not sharing everything you know, but really being candid about things when it's time to be candid. And I was working with a great leader just yesterday, and she had to share a difficult message with an employee group. And so she had called me for some coaching and advice, and we role played some things. And she said she'd been given the advice not to say she was personally disappointed. And I refuted that. And I said, you have to say that. That's perfect because that's who you are as a person. And this is a disappointing message. It's okay. And it's important to be human. So those are some of the things that I think are really critical. In addition, I still remember the training with you that I went through. I think those things that we say, how we say things is so important. And it's not about what verbiage do we use. It's about how are we making a connection with that other human being?
You said the trigger word, Cheri. You said, because connection wraps it up for me. And you only get great connection by truly being yourself.
Absolutely.
And I'm big on promoting empathic leadership, but not soft leadership.
I love that word, empathic leadership. And
Because,
we all know when someone's not being themselves and it just doesn't feel good, even though
right,
there's no bad intent.
right. Please. And what if you're watching, if you're listening to this, you cannot see Cheri's screen. So if you're watching this on YouTube or wherever, you can see the screen. And Cheri has horses in the background. And she shared that this is her view of her front yard. And I said, no, leave it up. This is who you are. That's fantastic. So when we have great connection, it never ceases to amaze me how much more people will do for you, with you, because of you, and forgive about things that they don't like, your crazy request, and some organizational dysfunction to a bit because they have a better connection with you.
Yeah, it's so true. And early in my career, one of the mistakes that I made was I thought that it was my role to be very professional, very buttoned up, always, focused on the business. And I didn't share things like, it's just a blessing to me in my life that I can have this hobby farm. It was a dream of mine. And when I talk about that now, people get to know who I am. And there's such an importance for all of us to know who it is that we are working with, collaborating with, because that builds trust.
Absolutely.
Earlier in my career, I didn't know there was a gap. I could sense it. There was a disconnect, as I like to call it, a disconnect. And it was because people didn't really know me and I wasn't giving them the opportunity to know me. And so I think that's also really important. As you said, be yourself. People are going to be drawn to you because they want to get to know you.
They'll either be drawn to you, or if they still don't like you, they will definitely respect that you are who you are.
100%.
Yeah, I find this on LinkedIn a lot. People come up to me, obviously they like the leadership things that I put out. However, I get more acknowledgement, for lack of a better word, for my business aside a sec picks. When I do business aside a sec and I put a post every 2 weeks about my family, you know how many people come up to me in the real world about my son that plays football, or my daughter, I was doing her nails, or my wife and I are out on a date, or my older son. Like, that gets more because I'm showing you who I am. And I want to encourage people to have the same type of work-life harmony. So that really, it really stands out. And I love what you said about being yourself. You also mentioned the word transparency. Can you talk about, just a little tiny bit about why transparency as a leader is so monumentally important?
Transparency is critical, again, to building that trust, one, but also giving people the information they need to be able to move forward in their job. And so often I hear leaders say, oh, they don't really need to know that, or I don't want to worry them, whatever their thought process is, and not sharing as much information as they can at the time. And what I have found is we as human beings, if there is a vacuum of information, and we know that there's a vacuum there, we always assume the worst, don't we?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
instead of preventing employees from worrying, as this one leader was attempting to do, where his thought process was around that, he actually was creating more anxiety inadvertently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my theory is everyone is an adult, right? Even though we have a hierarchical system, typically in corporations, everyone's an adult. When you're transparent, you then can begin a real conversation. I can't tell you how many times we've shared messages. I've been on executive teams where we were worried about, but this is a really hard message. We got to get through this difficult time. We did it. We prepared. I have to tell you, this is not something that I would recommend anyone do when they're sharing a difficult message of, okay, let's go talk to them right now. And it takes preparation so that you can say the right words, be sure that you're getting feedback from your peers on, am I relaying things in the manner of which, what's the perception I'm creating? So we do a lot of preparation when we have to deliver difficult messages. But what always happens every time I can recall in these situations, Andre, is employees will come up afterwards and the first thing they do is they thank us. Thank you for being as honest as you can. First thing. Next thing happens is people start sharing ideas. And that conversation that I mentioned, now everyone's brain is working on this, not just half a dozen or a dozen people's brain.
Yeah.
And it starts the conversation, and what it does in the culture then
Mm.
It builds culture. If you can do that consistently, the culture then begins to be one of openness, trust, and real empowerment and collaboration.
Absolutely. You guys listening, I told you that Cheri is going to drop some nuggets and transparency. We cannot, as leaders, be bullied by our people. And I see that a lot. Leaders are getting bullied by their people. I know leaders that are wearing army fatigues and, shimmying down the hallway because they don't want any problems and things like that. So, and I say that to say, listen, we can't be bullied by our people or our team when we have a new way, a new direction that we either want to go or must go. Sometimes the changes and the hard news is to keep their job, and they may not know that. So I'm
Right.
big on what's your vision, and I share we're
Yeah,
going this direction. We will be elite in this. How we get there may be up for debate, but not that we get there.
absolutely.
And when we're transparent like that, I was writing while you were speaking, it seems like it's going to either allow people to jump on board, it's going to invite people to jump on board, or it's
Yes.
going to allow us to find a different place for some people that we didn't want to lose, but this is no longer the train for them.
Oh, you're so right. It's critical for leaders to set that direction, set that vision, and then empower everyone to join. It's one of the mistakes that I've seen and I've probably made myself, is really being too involved. We've got the term micromanagement, but it's more than that. It is, set the vision, empower everyone to be included. And as you were saying, part of life is change. And I
Yes.
think we're afraid of change as human beings sometimes, especially when we don't know where we're going. And I think one of the wonderful things that can happen in an organization that has built this open trust communication that we're talking about is we can say goodbye and good luck to folks who just they're ready for a new adventure.
Right.
And
Right.
I was really privileged to work in an organization where we did that. And the president of the company was so fabulous and gracious about publicly wishing people the best of luck. And we
Yes.
hope that you return to us one day. And do you know, there were so many people who left, had their other adventures, and came back. And
Right.
and they had wonderful perspective. So I think that those transitions are really healthy, and it can be really healthy.
Mhm.
They can be really challenging if the culture is not as healthy, but life is about change and adventure.
Absolutely. And as leaders offer this new way that we're going, like you mentioned, do we have the proper training? Do they have the tools to be successful? Do we have a high expectations, but also some patience for failure? And then, they want to come along, fantastic. But those that come, we have a high expectation. Those that are leaving, I know an organization, I can't remember the name, but there's an organization out there that helps people get job placement if you want to leave. I said, that's above and beyond. Wow, that person will never forget that organization. And you mentioned a lot of people come back. It's almost like being a parent. Your kid is going to choose something that you don't agree or think is not best, or hey, Godspeed, go do it. But my door is always open if you need me. Come on back. And so that's a great segue to transition. Now,
Yeah.
you and other people and other leaders may have switched jobs before. Like I said, it's not, a generation ago where my parents, you got a job, you stayed for 30, 35 years, you retire, and that was it. So I want to ask you a couple of different questions, but I don't want to ask them all at once. So in regarding transition, how do you know when it's time to go?
I ironically, Andre, was just coaching an executive leader on this yesterday, literally. And what we were talking about was she was running up against so many frustrations. And as we dug into that, I kept saying to her, this dynamic or the styles of leadership that you're running up against, that you're frustrating you, the way of doing business in this organization, that's their values. You
Hmm.
have different values.
For better or worse. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I said. There's no right or wrong to it.
Yeah.
They're just different. And the question you have to ask yourself is, one, is this an organization where you can feel good, where you don't need to go home and vent for an hour after every day that you work? That's a sign of an unhealthy, situation. And so I think, again, this leader was so wrapped around, but I can see the opportunity. I know I can make a difference here. And I had to ask her the question, do they want that difference made?
Ooh. Can you
And the
say that
conversation
one
started.
more time? Because I want people to catch what you said. That is powerful.
Yeah. Sometimes we see the opportunity and we have goals, but do the other people in the room, do they want to make those changes?
Hmm.
And so that is something that's really cool. And there's nothing wrong, right? It's not right or wrong. I think when we're young, we're told right or wrong, yes or no. And it is, okay, this is just different. This is a difference of goals, difference of values, whatever it is. And I think when you can assess that, what is it? Are things going to change? If they're not, that's okay. That doesn't make, the other party wrong. They're just on a certain path that's right for them. It's not right for you. You have to be, and to do your best work, you have to be in an environment that aligns with your values, aligns with how you like to do business.
Yeah.
If you like to do business as a transparent leader and you're working with an organization that is very conservative in how it shares information, that's going to be very frustrating to you.
Well,
And so
I burnt
that's
out of a job like that, and I was right. Guys, listening, I was right about every single thing that I said, but I was so wrong about how often I said it, who I said it to, and how I disconnected from my passion, my team, and my clients back then because of it. So let me ask you the second question to this. I love what you mentioned. Do our values align? I want it, but do they want it?
that's right.
You're going to have two different types of people. Some people are going to say, I'm going to stick it out for whatever reason. Maybe they
Yeah.
need that check once every 2 weeks. Maybe they're addicted to the potential of the experience, whatever. If somebody's going to stay where their values don't align, how would you best suggest that they still be a great leader and not become a part of a problem?
Brilliant question. The first thing that comes to my mind is find supporters to build around you. Find that internal network. Find like-minded people so that you can support one another. It's so important. And as you were speaking, Andre, I was thinking, why do people stay in organizations that they aren't aligned to? What I often find is they've built really great relationships and they stay for those relationships.
Yes.
So find the relationships that are going to, one, be supportive to you personally, but also will be your allies. I learned a new word in the sense of corporate work about 2 years ago, and it was ally. And it was being used in the sense of diversity. But I love that term ally. Who are your allies? Because if you don't have any allies, work is going to be so incredibly hard to nearly impossible.
Absolutely. And it keeps coming back down to this connection thing, right?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And with hybrid and remote work, getting these allies may be more difficult. So, for example, my wife was going in once a week, and initially she didn't want to go to the office once a week. And I said, my opinion, every organization needs to bring people in to celebrate, congregate, and collaborate, because that all yields that last C is connection. So if
Absolutely.
you're completely remote, being able to find those allies on those Zoom calls and get the, hey, do you mind if I reach out to you? Hey, happy Friday, Cheri. I hope everything's going great. I realized we were really connecting on that Zoom call. Do you mind if I give you a call on your own? Love to know more about your role.
100%, Andre. I have to tell you, my personality style is one of achievement and building. I love to build and create things. The single most important thing that I have done in my current role, and I've been there just a little over a year, I've been very purposeful because it's a 100% remote role. I work with people all over the world, which is phenomenal. I have been very purposeful about reaching out to people and say, hey, let's just have a coffee connect.
Yes.
I can't, the response to that has been so overwhelmingly positive.
Because they're
And
going crazy at home, sitting around doing
that's
1,000
right, looking at the
emails with
same
no
walls.
contact.
And there's something about being on screen. It's a wonderful
Yes.
technology, but you're right. There's something about it that's also challenging. And so those are the things, and it only takes 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And think about how you can carve out 20 minutes 2 or 3 times a month,
Yes.
both and I build relationships with people I work with closely by doing that, and those become even more close. And I also get to know other people that then when I'm thinking, oh, where can I find this material that I need? I reach out and all of a sudden I have all these allies that help me do my job. And that's not the purpose of the building the relationship, but it's one of the wonderful benefits, of course.
Absolutely. And the word for the day, if you are not listening, is allies. I love that. I love that. Now, that's going to take us to the next person because one person is going to stay and stick it out for as long as possible. Hopefully, and I tell people when you stay, the goal is to be an asset, not a liability. Okay.
100%.
Some people are going to go. So my question to you is, if you're a person that's going to go, how do you go like a leader?
You go before you get to the point where you're the person who is negative about everything, right? That we all have seen those people that they've got the cloud over their head. And that's why I think it's so critically important when we start to have those feelings of disconnect. This is hard, boy. I really don't agree with how this is progressing. Whatever the thoughts are that we all individually have when we're sensing that disconnect, spend time in reflection.
Mm.
As someone who is a driver, I lean in. My tendency is to lean in. I'm going to drive harder, right? I'm going to try harder. I'm going to, do something. I'm going to try and convince all these people. And what I have learned in my advancing years, Andre, is when you start to feel that resistance, sit back for just a moment.
Mm.
Don't disengage.
Mm.
Sit back and reflect. What's happening?
Yes.
And once you have that reflection, continue to reflect so that you can make the decision of, is this somewhere where I can do what I want to do, what's important to me and the organization?
Right.
Or is it not, for whatever the reason is? Make that decision before it weighs you down and
Before you start burning bridges.
Before you start burning bridges. That's the key. You
Because
always want to go so that you could go back if you wanted to. You always
absolutely,
want to have an invitation to come back.
absolutely, because that cloud of negativity typically, not all the time, will reduce your results. And
Yes.
results matter as a leader. It's not the only thing, but they'll take results first, So once your results stop, now you're that liability and you're leaving. And I burnt out of a job that I loved or thought I would retire at. And I did 12 years great. My last 3, I was so burnt out, I couldn't even get a letter of recommendation, nor did I want to ask. You could keep it.
But
12,
the
3.
emotions were so strong at that point.
They were so strong at that point, and for me to them and them to me. So that I want to share something that you mentioned, and you should sit and reflect. And I just released an article, and a video will come out soon. And I call it a leader's 10-minute sit.
Love it.
So whether it's informal, like I have a chair that I like to sit in at the end of the night, but that's not always realistic with how I travel, things like that. So maybe it's in your car. And the difference from meditation is this, because I was a mental health therapist in my former life. Some type of meditation is you see the logs come down the river and ideas in your mind. You see it, you let them pass. I'm saying grab 1 or 2. Grab one, and maybe it's, I'm really struggling at work. I really don't like going in there. This is whatever that is, grab it. And the first thing, okay, what's the issue? What don't I like? What part am I playing? What the heck do I want to do about it? And go as far down the rabbit hole as you can.
100%. Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Right?
And then maybe another, like, and I've done this, that log that was flowing down the stream. Maybe it was my wife and our marriage. Yeah. Maybe it was my kids. Maybe it was, a business idea. After I speak on stage or I do a training at an organization, I must sit for 10 minutes, whether it's on the plane, preferably over a cigar and a drink when I get home. That's my self-care. But I have to reflect, what was my biggest takeaway? What did I like most? What did I learn? What would I fine tune? And sometimes, this is way off script, sometimes I learn the most from my freaking Uber driver.
I love Uber and cab drivers.
Right.
Have
They
great
say some things
conversations
that
with
are
them.
so profound, and you wouldn't have thought that it's going to come from there, and boom. So,
It's absolutely. And you're making me think about, reflection. And one of the things that I coach leaders on and have for years and years, we've been talking about challenges, but I always ask leaders, how often are you taking time and quality time without interruption to think about the way forward, the vision? Where are you at with the vision that you mentioned earlier? So critical. So many leaders,
yeah.
whether they are managers, directors, or at the executive level, we're busy. It's the busy pandemic,
Oh,
right?
right.
I know that could be a completely
Busy
different
versus
podcast.
better. Right.
Exactly. And a whole other podcast that we could talk about forever, but it's so important to have time to think about where you want to go. I call that strategy time. But it also, to your point, the reflection time is about what just happened? How can we get better? Do we need to follow up on something?
Right.
All those nuggets of opportunity that often are missed because we don't spend just even 10 minutes, to your point, thinking about it, giving ourselves time to process.
Right. And
Okay.
you're not a leader if we're always responding to our emotion of the minute. So this
100%.
happened, this was my emotion, that's what I did. That reflection time is, so you want to live a great life professionally or personally, increase your reflection, increase your self-awareness, have your vision and your plan. And I tell people about their vision all the time. Have your vision. However, that's
Absolutely.
a starting point, not an ending point. Once you have your vision, what are the vision factors? The 3 to 5 things that when either you or your team do them consistently, the vision must come true. So
Slow and
focus
steady
on
wins
your
the race,
vision
Andre.
factors and not your vision. Yeah, it's awesome.
Slow and steady wins the race. And I want to go back to something you said about one of the experiences you had when you were really burnt out. I've made similar mistakes in my career. And, I think back, if I would have spent some time reflecting to
Mm,
say, is this how I want this relationship to end?
mm-hmm. Mm,
I'm very hopeful that I would say no. And when I look back, I have relationships from previous employers that are some of the best personal and professional relationships that I have. But I think about those
mm.
missed opportunity of the organization where I just said, I'm done with you people. I'm out. Right. And
Right.
just gave my 2 weeks notice and gone. And though there were amazing people in those organizations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And,
I
and
my
maybe
my
some of
regret is
them
I've
felt
let people
just
stay
like
with them.
you. Yeah.
100%, 100%. So
Let me ask you
reflection
about
time.
mixed messages,
Yeah.
because there is a new thing. I mean, everyone experienced COVID and the pandemic. So the whole world went to at home. Now
Yeah.
I very much benefited from it because I was big on work-life harmony before leadership. And companies told me, yeah, that's great, but how the heck is that going to help us? So I added leadership years ago. Then the pandemic hit, and everybody was like work-life harmony. I've been saying work-life harmony, but now organizations, and leaders want their people to come back to work.
Me too.
So we're saying we want to care for our employees. We want to be flexible, but we also want and need you here. So you have leaders feeling a certain way. You have employees feeling a certain way. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you would do as a leader?
It's a great question. I just read an article this morning that spoke about the vast majority of organizations are asking their employees to be back in the office an average of 3 days a week. And this, as people were coming back, we have all sorts of different people. Some people who love to be in the office for all the reasons, some people who really love being at home. But one of the things that's happening is we all changed our life, right? We got into a new rhythm of how we worked. I remember pre-pandemic, I was just going, going, going. I left home at 6 in the morning. I didn't get home till 7 at night. During the pandemic, I saw all the things that I was missing and how much better my life was when I could have flexibility.
Mm.
And so to go back to your question, so many of our leaders now talk about how they care about employees. That is a wonderful evolution from where things used to be 30 years ago, right?
Yep.
So it's a wonderful evolution. And I do believe that organizations that say that by and large truly mean it. What happens is we have what Lencioni calls the organizational health, which is we care about you. We want to give you flexibility. We want to empower you. And we know that the results and the technical things will happen because of that. But our business world is driven by numbers. And so what I see happening is leaders now, we were so focused on care, rightly so during the pandemic in so many ways. And now we're sort of moving back into the numbers. What about the numbers? And so what the best things that leaders can do, I feel, is figure out how to integrate the we care with whatever the pressures are. In my world and with the leaders that I've dealt with, it's numbers. It's how many calls can we make a day? It's what's the net, what's the net profit, whatever the numbers are, so that you can say, okay, if you have, and one of the things that's coming up right now is inflation, right? Inflation has hit so many people so hard. Inflation is about numbers, right? How much do I have to spend on groceries? How many groceries do I get? It's half a cart full of what I used to be able to get for this.
Yeah.
And so many organizations are unable to match. They truly are. It would be financially irresponsible to try and keep up with financial pressures, those pressures. But I think there's a lot of other things that leaders can do if they're creative. Hey, you've got a lot of costs going out for daycare. Do we have the ability to flex your schedule so that you and your spouse can manage that differently? Sometimes it's as simple as, I'm going to go pick up, 4 or 5 $50 gas cards and raffle them.
Yes.
And even though things may not solve for some of the pressures in our world today, if someone does that, well, they care about you then. They're doing what they can.
How about this? I'm going to add on to that because I love what you just said. And I talk to some companies, some will, some won't. It's okay. But a concierge service, you have your top leaders or you have your top frontline people, because let's face it, your leaders, they're making good money. Okay. But inflation has hit them too. You don't know their bills. So not to say that they don't need it. However, you got some all-star frontline people that are not interested in your promotion, that you cannot give a raise to. But how about a concierge service? A local company can come over to their home and do a cleaning service. I know I was sitting here with 3 kids while on 17 Zoom calls a day. Maybe a concierge service that would provide or make dinner and drop it off, or even make it in their home. Maybe there's some things there. Those 2 things alone, because I don't want to cook. I'm very fortunate that my wife does. But what if she didn't? What if I was a single dad or a single parent? So those concierge services do not cost a lot of money, but they can give you a whole lot of impact for your people.
Andre, for 100 employees, let's just say, if we were to hire a caterer to box up, a nice meal, there could be 2 or 3 options, right? A vegetarian option, and just taking that home, that would be less than $10,000 for those 100 employees, for sure. You take 2 or 3 meals, you got 2 or 3 kids, take 2 or 3. Think about how memorable that would be. And that employee would be telling their family, their friends. Yeah. So there's so much value to a company brand to do that. If you're a leader thinking, oh, this is great talk, but I've got to figure out those numbers, you can't put a price on brand recognition and positive brand, right? That employee is going to tell 100 people about that story. So you've made your money back and then some. And then just think about that employee and how they feel about you. Absolutely. They know you care about them. They know you.
I concierge a driving service. So every time I fly, I have a driver pick me up. I never thought that I'd be saying this, so bear with me. So I have a driver pick me up at my home, take me to the airport, and then back and forth. And from a concierge service, to be able to do that to a employee that's really bringing in those numbers. You work in sales, this is your top earner, or whomever.
Absolutely.
For them to be able, you know what I do in that backseat? Emails. I do work. So they're doing work, but they're not spending the gas. They have an elite service. You know how many people have never been picked up by a driving service before? Do you know what that feels like to most people?
I've had the opportunity just a couple times, and you feel like a superstar.
You do. You really do. Like I did it for the first time, and now I do it all the time because, one, the convenience, but I tell you what, it feels fantastic. So it's something that doesn't always cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to happen all the time, but you shared and we shared, hopefully you guys believe, some really great ideas that you may be able to serve your company, whether it's small, medium, or large.
Absolutely. And Andre, you've touched upon something that I'm very passionate about, and that is mental health. You talked about burnout earlier. The language I talk in this space is energy in, energy out. And one of the things that we've been talking about is how much energy people are expending every day just in daily needs.
Absolutely.
And so if we can help them with those daily needs, it just fills that energy bucket a little bit.
Absolutely.
And if you can do that a little bit every day, that balance and that harmony is just going to be that much more in reach to you and your family.
Couldn't have said it better, and you guys have heard it here. We are into the last portion of our show, and I'm calling it doesn't have a fancy title, at least yet, but I call it rapid fire. So I want to ask you 4 rapid fire questions. You just spit the answer out, and we'll grow leadership and work-life harmony wise through it.
I love it. This is like a game show.
Let's do it. I got to get some theme music. So question number 1, what was your biggest leadership mistake? Because we've all managed before we knew how to lead. Your biggest leadership mistake, and what was the lesson you learned from it?
I was working with an organization that brought me in to make change. That was the mission. I was unable to read the tea leaves. I went on that mission 150%. Mm-hmm. I wasn't able to read the tea leaves that said, oh, they were interested in a little bit of that, not a lot.
Gotcha.
They needed some other things. Yeah.
So the lesson learned was
that. I left that organization. It was a great role for me. I left it because I was so disappointed. Wow. And as I reflect back, I see that might have been different if I would have paused. And it was during the pandemic. It was when we met, right? We remember that. And that pause would have made a big difference there.
I love that because I love rating questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute most, 1 being none at all, how much change are you talking about? When I was a therapist, I used to ask people, and I knew that they were lying to me. And I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, 1 being the least, how much are you telling me the truth right now? And I literally had clients say, I'm 7. And I said, great. What does that 7 mean? What's the 7 mean? And then what's the 8, 9, or 10 that we're leaving out? And
difference here.
Those scaling questions, phenomenal. So hopefully you guys use that. And I love the pause. Number 2, your best place, your favorite place to vacation.
Oh my goodness, Scotland.
Ooh.
I have Scottish ancestry. In fact, I was in a cab in Edinburgh, and the cabbie said to me, "Was this your first time?" Natural question. "Oh no, this is my 5th or 6th time at the time." And he said, "Oh, you have deep roots here, don't you? People come once, but if you have deep roots." And it was one of those, like we were saying earlier, Andre, it was one of those conversations where I get chills thinking about it now, because he just intuited, and he knew exactly who I was at that moment, right?
Awesome.
This is a woman who was part of us. It was fabulous.
So if somebody's in Scotland, where would you suggest that they visit?
I am a Highlands girl, so go to Skye. Really go out into the outer reaches of Scotland. People are so friendly. Drive on the other side of the road. Stop in a path because the sheep are going across and you have to sit there. That's a good time to pause. When the sheep are going across the road, enjoy it. Don't be frightened. Enjoy it. Enjoy the pause.
There's your 10-minute sit right there.
Right. That's right.
Question number 3. Your best piece of advice for more frontline workers.
Have a learning mindset. The world is moving so quickly. And I have experienced, unfortunately, and this is one of the great pains of my career. I have unfortunately experienced factories being shut down, jobs being eliminated, and not just for financial means, but because the skills required were going elsewhere.
Right.
So be a continuous learner, be curious, always be leaning into, oh, this is interesting. Ask questions. And there's so much benefit to that.
Love that.
Learning. Yeah.
Last question. Wish I did have some music. We got to get some music for you guys. How do you best transition from work to home? And if you're remote, from shutting that laptop down to going back to your now second part of your day?
Andre, I can sing Whitney Houston and Adele like nobody's business as long as the radio is turned up to level 20 and you can't hear me.
That is awesome. So Whitney Houston is your transition. My brother, and I know he's not listening, but maybe he is the biggest Whitney Houston fan on the planet. So he would be so happy to hear you say that Whitney Houston is your transition.
She was a gift. She was such a talent. So amazing.
Wow.
So amazing.
I love asking that question. I really just start asking that question. I cannot wait to hear so many people answers because I had no idea that you were going to say Whitney Houston. And this is one of the reasons, guys, you listening, that I open up every one of my team meetings and every one of my one-on-ones with your positive of the week. Because questions like what I just asked and what you can ask and sharing positives of the week will allow you answers you would have never have thought. And it allows conversations moving forward that will be so much more fun than the regular old work conversation. Because now I get to know that Cheri likes Whitney Houston and I can say, hey, what's your favorite song? Or hey, did you dance today? That's so cool.
And I know that your brother loves Whitney Houston now, so there's more affinity being built. Yes. And I just have to say, Andre, it's been such a wonderful time speaking with you. I feel so energized. It's conversations like this that fill the energy bucket. And as you were speaking earlier about your business aside, I have to tell you, I love your business aside posts on LinkedIn. And I would love, I'm going to invite myself I would love to have cigar and a scotch with you and your dad. I love those pictures.
Let's do it. I am so excited for that. That'll be a lot of fun. There's nothing like a cigar in one hand, a drink in another, and a good friend or friend's family sitting around having a great conversation. It is my favorite way to be when I'm not doing what I do for a living.
That is beautiful harmony right there. I just feel it. I feel the harmony in that.
That's awesome. Well, Cheri, thank you so much for being here today. I told you guys that this was going to be a great one. So I hope that you took some notes. I'm going to ask you guys a question listening, because as soon as you click off of this, your life is waiting to gut punch you with all of the emails you just missed, the fires that you need to put out, and also your home life. So what was your biggest takeaway from today? You're not going to do every single thing that we talked about, but there was something that stood out for you. So I'm asking you as a leader right now, what homework are you going to give yourself based on your biggest takeaway? What are you going to use and apply moving forward that enhances not only your leadership and work-life harmony, but that of those that you are leading today? So start thinking about that. And Cheri, is there any way that people can connect with you, whether it's on LinkedIn or elsewhere?
Oh, I would love that. Please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn moniker is Cheri Allen. And I'm based on the East Coast right now in Vermont. So please reach out. I'd love to connect with you. Let's
do it. So guys, in the links, you will be able to connect with Cheri. Reach out. She's one of the most awesome people in the world. Know your homework, do your homework, and enjoy your evolution. Until next time, I'll see you later.